So because of the weather, we had a couple of mishaps with folks who were hoping to join us in person today, who will now be joining us online or possibly later. So this does affect our first panel this morning. So for Decolonizing LIS education through the dual degree, Zakiya, Collier, and Sandy Enriquez will be joining us online. But their answers are here in person, so we get that gift. Our second session of the day, we're reading on some technology things, so they may be presenting at the end of the day today. So our third presentation, being given by Quincy Macklin and Nicole Kuna, they will be taking the session 2 spot. So just kind of imagine everything moving up a little bit. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And if our first presenters are ready, we'll get you started. Thank you so much. All right, so coming into the podium, we have Mejia, Leia, Pellot, and Whitney for Decolonizing LIS education through the dual degree.
In order of our presentations this morning, the panel features Mejia. Mejia is a first-year dual degree student in the History of Women and Gender program at New York University, in the Library and Information Science program at Long Island. She received her Bachelor of Arts in History from Georgia. She currently works at the Tenement Library and Robert F. Webb in the Labor Archives, coordinating public programming and providing work services. Her interest in social movements in the late 20th century, African diaspora, Latin America, public history, and economics. Pellot is a first-year dual degree student studying library and information science and Consciousnes at New York University in Long Island. Her interest in the intersection between costume and culture and film, fashion, and literature. She currently works as a teaching artist in an after-school program with curriculum focuses on literacy and textile. Zakiya is a second-year dual degree student in media, culture, and communication at New York University and library and information science at Long Island. She is honored to be a 2017-2019 DERAIL Fellowship Scholar. Her research interests in the intersection of Black studies, social media, spatio-temporal practices, cultural memory, oral cultures, and the politics of archival practices. She is currently a reference graduate and graduate assistant at New York University in oral history and physical heritage. Sandy Enriquez is a first-year dual degree student in Latin American Studies at New York University and library science at Long Island University. She studied anthropology at the University of California, Los Angeles, and her research interests in the intersections of race, culture, heritage studies, and indigenous languages, social justice, tourism. She is currently a collector in the First Library. The presentation is followed by this dynamic recruitment involved in umbrella title discussion, LIS education, the dual degree program for all collaborative partnership between Long Island University and New York University. program launched in September 2006, and the commission was founded and is now cultivating students who become subject specialists, scholars, and librarians. Those who would go on careers in academic institutions, research institutes, and a myriad of cultural and corporate organizations. The program prides itself on the mentorship component, which gives students specialized and practical guidance as they navigate their coursework and professional pursuits. Upon completion of both degrees, graduates earn an ALA accredited Master of Science in Library and Information Science from LIS Palmer School and a Master of Arts or Science from NYU's Graduate School of Arts and Science, or from 3 programs within NYU Steinhardt School: Costume Studies, Food Studies, or Media, Culture, and Communication. This dual degree program affords us the opportunity to explore 2 distinct, though occasionally overlapping courses of study. These separate paths often require having 2 different mindsets, a double consciousness, if you will. That duality affords us a unique lens through which to view diversity in our 2 areas of study, and invites us to take a deeper look at that overlapping section, which contains what can be a catalyst to drive diversity initiatives to improve recruitment and retention rates and to combat gender neutrality in LIS. As R.D. Enriquez, the director of the University of South Carolina School of Library and Information Science, said, "To be a librarian is not to be neutral or passive or waiting for a question. It is to be a radical change, a radical positive change of vision within your community." With that, I'll turn it over to our first presenter, Enriquez.
Thank you, Whitney, for that introduction. Thank you also to the organizers of the 2018 DERAIL Forum for putting together this wonderful program. I would also like to thank the staff of the New York University Division of Libraries, in particular to Carol Dell, Timothy Johnson, and Evelyn Enriquez for supporting this project. And finally, many thanks to my co-panelists for the thought-provoking conversations leading up to today's discussion. My presentation, Examining a Neutral Librarian and Objective Historian, is aimed to get us started on this conversation about the dual degree program, but also how different disciplines approach the same issues, the same conversations. On November 11, 1989, approximately 40 people attended the first meeting of the group that eventually became the Progressive Librarians Guild, or PLG. This draft statement and purpose of the PLG developed stated, "Above all, we will dispute the claim for the library as a neutral, non-political organization that serves best when preserving the status quo, and attempt to renew the library as an agent for progressive social change." Although the term progressive appears in both name of the organization and in statement purpose, the PLG meeting minutes that I found at the time of the library and Robert F. Labor Archives revealed that some members suggested radical was a more accurate characterization. Between 1989 and 1991, the PLG took a public stance on controversial issues such as the United States military intervention in the Middle East, the Israel-Palestine conflict, and how academic institutions should engage with that, and the boycott of books, journals, newspapers, and other forms of information published in South Africa during apartheid. The Progressive Librarians Guild, which is still active today at institutions throughout the country, College, is just one of the organizations of librarians, library workers who are not librarians, library science students, and other interested individuals who challenge the traditional approach to librarianship. Reference services have changed drastically since 1876, when Samuel Sweat Green advised librarians to avoid scrupulously propagation of any particular set of views in politics, art, history, philosophy, or theology. Despite the significant shifts that have occurred in the field in the last century and a half, the prevailing norm is still that the personal beliefs of librarians and information professionals should in no way affect their interactions with patrons. The expectation that librarians will provide users with unbiased services is consistently articulated in guidelines disseminated by professional organizations such as the American Library Association, or ALA, and individual institutions. neutrality or the appearance of neutrality is supposed to make libraries accessible to patrons with a wide variety of needs and perspectives. Worries about library services that are biased or inaccessible cannot be easily dismissed. Censorship was a major concern in libraries even before the 2016 presidential election, making political issues even more pressing, as illustrated by the annual Banned Books Week celebration co-sponsored by the LA Office for Intellectual Freedom. But librarians are not the only ones concerned with censorship, intellectual freedom, and historians are similarly cautious of being objective when researching the past, particularly when writing about marginalized groups or issues of contention. In Silencing the Past, Power and the Production of History, Michelle Roth-Creel argued, a fetishism of the facts, premised on an antiquated model of natural sciences, still dominates history and the other social sciences. It reinforces the view that any conscious positioning should be rejected as ideological. Thus, the historian's position is officially unharmed. It is that of the non-historical observer. In other words, historians are trying to maintain a certain level of scholarly detachment from the historical actors that they study in order to ensure that narratives about the past are not reported by the ideas of the present, even if they are relevant to the current events. But the reality is that people, and by extension, the information that we create and disseminate, are not neutral. So what perspectives are privileged when scholars are expected to remain neutral or objective? My studies in the history of women and gender program at University and the Library and Information Science program at Long Island University have been shaped by the theoretical framework of intersectionality developed by legal scholars Crenshaw, who is also a major figure in the field of critical race theory, wrote in 1995 that her focus on the race and the intersections of race and gender only highlights the need to account for multiple grounds of identity when considering how social world is constructed. The need for the intersectional approach that Crenshaw identified in her analysis of violence against women of color in 1995 was also apparent in my own research on the African-American and social movements in the United States during the 1960s and 1970s, such as the welfare rights movement that was organized by African-American women. These topics are more directly connected to the issues of identity politics that Crenshaw examined. However, I was surprised at how relevant the framework of intersectionality has been to my experience in the school degree program. In hindsight, it seems obvious. As a dual degree student, I am not only learning about library information science, but also working at an archive, at a library, and helping historians access the documents that will then shape the books that are read in my history classes. As we go on to the rest of the presentations in this panel about the dual degree program, and as we go on and talk about neutrality at other points in the conference, I'd like us to keep in mind how these issues of race, gender, class, physical ability, and sexuality affect the way we understand positions of power. I'll leave you all with this other quote from Michelle Roth-Creel, which highlights the importance of this. He wrote, "History is the thick of power, but power itself is never so transparent that its analysis becomes superfluous. The ultimate mark of power may be its invisibility. The ultimate challenge to the exposition of its roots." Thank you.
Thank you, Mejia. As Whitney mentioned, my name is Leia. I'm one of the students in the degree. I am in costume studies and I'm getting my MRS from LA College. My presentation is focused on diversity within and dual degrees specifically. Over the course of this discussion, we're going to refer to whiteness, and in the context of this talk, that means white, heterosexual, capitalist, and middle class, as ideology based on beliefs, values, behaviors, habits, and attitudes which result in an unequal distribution of power and privilege. Beliefs, values, behaviors, habits, and attitudes, and gestures, enactments, and unconsciously repetitive acts which reinforce heteronormativity. So kind of wanted to focus on some of the things that are very typical for what we're learning in the degree. What is it about librarianship that kind of highlights some of these features? We're kind of taught that libraries are responsible for customizing their services to the communities that they serve. No two libraries are really exactly the same. And that's really a mandatory feature to make sure that we're delivering what the community needs from us. Unfortunately, students are kind of trained in a homogenized, kind of conformist environment when it comes to looking at how we are going to function within these roles. One of the small ways that ends up having a larger impact is when we're kind of cultivating where our careers will go. We're looking for different opportunities. We're asked to put together resumes that reflect our experience with libraries. And my particular experience is working in retail environments to kind of put myself through school or in my financial needs. I didn't have a lot of time to volunteer in library or get a part-time job as an assistant archivist. So this kind of posed an obstacle for me when looking for internships and jobs or trying to put myself out there to get the necessary training to push my education forward. In addition to that, when looking at how the structure is very pervasive in some small schools, these problems persist because of conformist thinking has been a part of our library scholarship from the very beginning. A major contributor to the invisible normativity of whiteness in librarianship has been the fact that whiteness has played such a fundamental role in the profession from the start. Public libraries in the U.S. developed initially as sites of cultural assimilation and Americanization of immigrants needing to learn the mores of white society. So we can see lots of small ways that this has been ingratiated into our program. So as far as the diversity initiatives that have come up as a result of this, how do we get more people of color or different genders, different transgender individuals into this fold to kind of bring librarianship to the masses to kind of complete our mission? For right now, a lot of diversity initiatives are very much focused on just increasing the percentage of different types of students in the program. There is very little to indicate that the addition of students is being considered. The curriculum doesn't approach topics that you may encounter as an other or a person of color within the profession. The field does not prepare students or expose them to opportunities that will help them connect to the communities that represent them. Focusing on numbers rather than the deeper issues of experience and structural discrimination allows the profession to take a self-congratulatory and complacent approach to the problem of diversity without naming or addressing the issue. We see this every day. Demands that are made of the student that is working full-time, who is also doing an internship and perhaps trying to find other ways to connect with colleagues who meet extra obstacles in trying to pursue a degree. As any of my colleagues will kind of share with you, doing one program where you're focused on library science and information, and the second program, as Whitney mentioned, and as Mejia referred to again, double consciousness, takes a huge toll on you emotionally and intellectually. So kind of looking at how we can support incoming scholars. Strategies for degree learning are focused on a kind of separative approach. Your degree, while your learning program is 100% focused on what's in front of you. This program specifically is focused on training subject specialists. Spending time incorporating your actual specialty is entirely up to the student. The ability to draw connections between the two fields is on you to figure out, to research, to reach out to people in both sides of the department to try and understand what it's going to look like for you when you graduate. There's very little space for students who need librarianship to understand where they fit in within the field. Professional development initiatives really need to do more to guide us. More conversations about different things you can do as a librarian, but also outside of libraries. Understanding that our role is not just about picking a specialty and finding a place to land, but what we're going to do with what we've learned and how we can reach the people that we want to reach. My specific degree in Consciousnes studies has absolutely nothing built into the mentorship component for the dual degree. As a Consciousnes studies scholar, there are a lot of interesting things that I can learn about fashion and culture and community, with very little direct influence on who I can reach out to for support and information. Based on what I know so far, there are roughly 3 positions for Consciousnes studies subject specialists in the country. At this time, they're all filled, and we don't have a reasonable expectation that they'll be vacated anytime soon. So for me, it's very important to figure out how I'm going to structure my career after graduation. Being able to leverage the experience of a librarian who has navigated this kind of role, who has an intimate understanding of what options are out there, or how I can really position myself to be successful, is a vital component for me going forward. So within support of librarians and librarianship, looking at where are these people? Who is out there to be a mentor or supporter of students who are coming into librarianship and trying to figure out what to do. It's not just necessary to support the student, we also need to support the supporters. People who are already out there in the field, professionals who know the ropes, have been through a few things, are capable of stepping in and giving their knowledge. These individuals are not also encouraged or supported to reach out to connect with individuals who being a librarianship as a whole, as far as I understand. As a part of our professional development, we're expected to shadow librarians at a reference desk within NYU. And it's an opportunity to get valuable training in those matters. However, I've personally had consistent issues meeting the demands of the department. Shadowing hours are scheduled in the middle of the day. The majority of us work full-time jobs, and this makes it very difficult to schedule that time, which is incredibly valuable to be able to connect with people in the library, make connections, network, literally learn the ropes of what it's like to be a reference desk. And it's difficult to make time for this, although it is incredibly important to do so. When I voiced my concerns and expressed my frustrations, I was viewed as problematic. My source of employment at the time was a retail job, and it was discussed with a certain amount of condescension and concern, confusion about my employment choices. I had the privilege to really work at other positions that would allow me the flexibility to go to school and sustain my cost of living. The general inability to find a way to accommodate my need was simply because they didn't expect to anticipate a student with a schedule that wasn't going to be completely free and available. The idea that a student could drop everything else that they were doing in their life and just focus on their studies wasn't something that they had planned to accommodate for. As you can imagine, this is a huge obstacle for different kinds of people coming from different walks of life, trying to pursue an education and running into what seem to be very small kind of hiccups in the road that are preventing very important experiences to attract their career. We, in general, need more ways to kind of correct for how we anticipate the needs of our scholars. If the diversity initiatives are going to be more than kind of a useless gesture. Introducing more people to the field, increasing recruitment, ultimately doesn't respond the way they expect, because there are things on the other side to really support that experience. If it wasn't for me already having a plan before I walked into graduate school, there's a good chance I would have decided that this program wasn't for me. There just wasn't enough information coming out of the degree to help me continue to understand that yes, there's a career for me when I graduate. Yes, this is exactly what I meant to be and what I need to be doing. So just another couple of words about training subject specialists. One of the things that we're told consistently is that the goal of this dual degree is to create subject specialists that can go out into the field and be part of the role of librarianship. However, my question is more about training subject specialists. For the most part, I'm being trained how to be a librarian, but my specialty, the training, the expertise is coming from a completely different school, a completely different department, and there's no There's also no guarantee that by the time I graduate, even if I do end up in a library, that my specialty will end up being useful. I could just as easily become a subject specialist in a completely different field. And it's not something that's discussed or really prepared for. With every subject specialty, we do our best to try to find space for ourselves. But the reality of the matter is that we have to find a way to be as flexible as possible if we want to enter the role of librarianship. And it's not something that's discussed as frequently or as openly as we would expect. All the cards aren't on the table as so said when recruits this program and we're encouraged to take this step. I was recently graced with the position of a teaching artist. I have the opportunity to engage young people with literacy through the arts. I get to encourage them to question and think critically, lead them to find resources that may fascinate and inspire, all of which are things that we aspire to do as librarians. However, that is clearly not a role in the librarianship track. Right now, we have an opportunity to reshape how we approach this field. A chance to leverage our experiences and reach out to others who are experiencing the same things that we are. We're able to use the skills that we've learned to help our communities, to reach out to the places that shaped us, and to have a positive impact. I would like to see in the future more opportunities, more initiatives to internalize this support, to reach out to others, and to continue to have this conversation. I will leave you with this quote: librarianship is not simply what we do at work, but a component for how we identify as people. Thank you so much.
I think now we're turning to the virtual component of the presentation.
Moreover, while some dual degree programs have an obvious symbiotic connection, i.e. history and MLIS, archives management, MLIS, etc., other degree programs such as costume studies and my own media, culture, and communication, hereinafter referred to as MCC. Wait, let me pause. Can you guys hear me? I'm looking at the chat here to make sure.
Yes.
Oh, okay, and I can hear you guys. Should I start over? Okay, all right. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's start the sentence over. Moreover, while some dual degree programs have an obvious symbiotic connection, history and MLIS, archives management and MLIS, other degree programs such as costume studies and my own area of study, media, culture, and communication, hereinafter referred to as MCC, have seemingly invisible connections, if any at all. This presents a slight burden on students as we are left to carve our own paths, make our own connections, and make the 2 degrees work to our benefit the best way that we can. In my experience, we end up having to doubly advocate for ourselves and our interests as the MA programs don't understand the lexicons and rich nature of the LIS program, and the LIS program resists the flexibility that an interinstitutional and interdisciplinary dual degree program requires. In addition, I find myself having to juggle these 2 different worldviews, lexicons, perspectives, and objectives in my own head. And as a person of color, I sometimes find this double thinking and double advocacy on my own behalf to be a labor I perform in addition to facing the countless struggles as a queer Black woman in a field that's 88% white. In his 1903, The Souls of Black Folk, W.E.B. Du Bois introduces the concept of double consciousness, which he describes as feeling one's two-ness as an American and a Negro, with 2 souls, 2 thoughts, 2 unreconciled strivings, 2 warring ideals in one dark body. Others have furthered Du Bois' concepts into other iterations such as triple and quadruple consciousness, accounting for ethnicity, race, gender, citizenship status, class, sexuality, and more. Although many of those other iterations apply to me, here I apply Du Bois' concept of double consciousness to my experience as a dual degree student, as I live suspended in the unreconciled space between my 2 degree programs. However, instead of understanding this fragmentation as a downfall of the NYU, LIU, or MCC, LIS dual degree program, or as an overall critique of LIS education, although that's always already necessary, I propose a reconceptualization of double consciousness that does not cause its possessor to suffer through the 2 incompatible dimensions, but instead presents an opportunity to imagine and explore the decolonization of library science education and the library, archive, museum profession as a whole. Nicholas Mirzov, who happens to be my thesis advisor, which is coincidence and not, in his 2002 Visual Culture Reader, argues that Du Bois' concept of double consciousness as the defining problem of the 20th century can be defined as a tension between the past and present, i.e. transatlantic slavery and our present existence in its afterlife. Mirzov suggests adding a notion of future in order to reevaluate and reimagine diaspora consciousness and its possibilities. Similarly, when applied within the context of the dual degree program, I find that what I'm calling dual degree double consciousness opens up the possibilities for diverse viewpoints and critical perspectives. It conditions the space in which one can be conscious of where one stands in relation to the library world and the world at large, and simultaneously be able to reimagine the possibilities of libraries and archives. In other words, although interdisciplinary joint degree programs such as the MCC LIS program often leave students feeling disjointed, it provides attention necessary for the decolonization of the field. The decolonization of archives and libraries. Imagine bringing that up to professors that are walking embodiments of colonial terms like provenance and liberal terms like neutrality. Nelson Maldonado Torres, in his outline of the 10 theses of coloniality and decoloniality, defines decolonization as challenging the terms in which humanity is defined and recognition takes place, new practices and ways of thinking, the opposition to coloniality, and the affirmation of forms of love and understanding that promote open and embody human interrelationality. Using his definition, I'll do 2 things. Quickly recount my experience conducting research and presenting a paper entitled Archival Survival, Remote Care in the Repositories for Black Lives in the Techniques for Care Symposium in MCC department at NYU, and offer some concluding thoughts on how this experience, which allowed me to examine and participate within the field of LIS, albeit through a decolonial lens, speaks to dual degree programs at large and their potential to transform this field from the outside in. NCC, unlike LIS, aims to train agile researchers able to think critically from diverse perspectives about changing industries, technologies, and cultures. One of those changing industries and cultures being libraries, despite some of their resistance to that change. Ironically, although I've always had a passion for libraries, it was through the study of Black feminist theory in MCC that brought me to the dual degree program. Namely through Black feminist theories like Audre Lorde, Christina Sharp, and Zakiya Hartman, as they creatively addressed the silencing of Black women in general, and more specifically in the archive. Being that MCC was the space in which I was first able to discuss or even encounter these issues, I found it easy to revisit the subject time and time again without belaboring the point, but instead finding it easier to critically examine libraries and archives and develop ways to further address, explore, and reimagine them. In contrast, I found it almost impossible to have critical conversations within my LIS program because there isn't exactly a platform in which to do so, nor are the ones charged with training future librarians terribly interested in considering the problematic nature of their own beliefs and practices within the field. Thus, I've turned to MCC in order to do some consideration of my own. Okay, so I'll quickly describe archival survival, remote care, and the repositories for Black lives, which was a paper presented in a November 2017 symposium in MCC. The symposium, Techniques for Care, explores how remote forms of care reconfigures patients into consumers, domestics into computers, victims into survivors, and the incarcerated into the community surveilled. In application to the field of library or archive science, I sought to explore what happens from Black feminist theory meets archival science in regards to Black people's absences from the archive. Black studies and English scholars, Christina Sharp and Zakiya Hartman, explore the absences that exist in the archive as a result of transatlantic slavery. However, instead of attempting to address the absences through the language of accountability and restorative justice that we may find in archival studies, Hartman and Sharp challenge themselves and their readers to consider the impossibility of recovering and redressing the violence and resultant silences of transatlantic slavery and its afterlife, and instead begin to reimagine and move forward from there. I ask, is it even possible to counter the historical and ongoing anti-Black exclusion? Christina Sharp asks, might we instead understand the absence of a National Slavery Museum in the U.S. as a recognition of the ongoingness of the conditions of capture? And that's from her 2016 book, In the Wake. From there, I began interviewing Black archivists stewarding collections, mostly documenting Black life, in order to explore how they attend to the lasting history of slavery and that evades containment and the preservation that archives usually require. In the paper, I argue, based on their retellings of the types of care that their roles require, that these archivists reconceptualize the Black archive as a space that recognizes the ways in which records, in which Blackness records and validates itself outside of the proverbial boundaries of the archive. This radical avowal of the Black condition necessarily calls for a decolonial, unscientific reconceptualization of what it means to document and report ongoing Blackness and anti-Blackness. I then highlight the remote forms of care based on the title of the symposium, Techniques of Care, that are at odds with the conventional archival practices which seek legibility, knowability, and proximity to the materials and the lives they document. The archivist's remote form of care, the archivists that I interviewed, include post-custodial care, archiving through programming, archiving one's own life as a form of self-care, creating art as a repository, and archiving as self-discovery. And ultimately, I conclude that documenting Blackness and anti-Blackness necessarily acknowledges some of the illegible and chaotic characteristics of documenting Black life, and moving from there allows the archivist to reconfigure the absences into possibilities and the victims of anti-Blackness into survivors. So now that I've told you a little bit about the paper, I'll kind of move on to some concluding thoughts about dual degree programs. So dual degree programs are at once appealing because of the ability to acquire the desired second master's at the same time as the MLS, but also off-putting because of the burden of the disjointedness placed on the shoulders of the student. However, it is here that I'd like to return to my original point about the potentiality for decolonization and reimagination through the disjointed, double-conscious nature that the dual degree program produces. Without this tension, or in being in these two programs, in these two spaces that sometimes conflict, I would not even be able to consider such a project that combines both my dedication to decolonization and my love for the library. So I conclude by saying that sometimes the two of these things come together, and other times it's quite healthy that they're separate. And I heard this from a vocal artist just the other day who also works in the corporate world, and she was explaining, how she manages to put these things together. And so, in many ways, this double consciousness that we suffer from is also a potential space of decolonizing this lovely field that we love. And that's it.
We have one more presentation from our colleague Sandy Enriquez.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, great. So my name's Sandy. Thanks for bearing with us with all these, weather issues, technology issues. This is my first time presenting in this format. So let's hope that it goes well. So my presentation is on dual world and dual degrees. So Latinx librarianship and recruitment. And specifically, I wanted to start with talking about hyphenated identity, because I had always spelled a dual degree as two separate words, and as I was doing the literature review for this, I realized that a lot of people actually hyphenate them. And I thought that that was a really interesting phenomenon, because we have a lot of literature on the hyphen and the importance of the hyphen in terms of identity, race, and culture, specifically in Latinx culture. So I have a quote here from Gustavo Fermat, and he's talking about being Cuban American and how that culture is a balancing act, and the visual image of the hyphen as a seesaw. It's going one way and then another, and you're usually on one side or the other or in between. And I feel like that's a really great metaphor to kind of understand the relationship of the two sides of the dual degree. And also for an individual who is Korean American, it's only fitting that I went into a educational trajectory that is a dual degree. So some of the goals of this essay was to learn about the recruitment strategies that are currently used to increase the number of Latinx individuals in libraries, and whether these strategies are working, or how can we know that they're working beyond statistics. Because as you know, statistics can only tell so much of the story, and really I'm interested in a lot of narrative forms of testimony, and looking at people's stories, people's case studies of their own experiences with the field. Another goal that I had was to look at dual degree programs as a potential spot for recruitment of minority students, and why would that be a good idea or not? And then share my experiences as a dual degree student, because again, there really is a gap in the literature of stories and experiences from people from these non-traditional backgrounds in the field. So a little bit more about the importance of these stories. I kind of touched on it in the last slide, but I really think that it's important for us to share how we got to where we are, because a lot of us, we don't follow the normal path into these programs. We're not really default in the standard option. So I think when we share the ways that we found ourselves here, the things that inspired us to be here, the things that challenged us to be here, we can really make connections with other people and really instill in people the importance of respecting those experiences that you've had and your background and using that to get to the place that you want to be. So if you're interested in this topic, I really recommend that you check out these two books. I found them really, really helpful in terms of learning more about these individual stories. So some of the recruitment efforts that I found when I was doing this research was a lot of the, these official overarching statements about diversity and the importance of increasing diversity, these organizations and these scholarships set up to increase diversity like Spectrum. Also outreach, so trying to reach out to students in high school or in like ethnic student groups in college, so like Latino organizations, etc. Mentorship was a really big thing. A lot of people felt that if you can mentor students, you can really inspire them to go into the field. Also visibility as recruitment, which is kind of a more passive form, but if we increase the number of minority librarians, then that will encourage students, minority students, to go into the field. And do these techniques work? Well, statistically speaking, the numbers of Latinx librarians today is still really, really low. And these examples kind of give you an idea. Essentially, 3% of credentialed librarians, according to ALA, today are identifying as Latino or Latina, which is incredibly low for the number of patrons that we have of that culture. And so when we're thinking about decolonizing Latinx recruitment, I was really interested in the words that we use when we're recruiting people. So this rhetoric of recruitment and the justification that we have for increasing diversity. You hear a lot of phrases like librarians should reflect the communities that they serve, or that interpersonal similarities like similar physical appearances or ethnic markers would increase, the ease and the comfort and the relationship between the librarian and patron. And I think these are really valid points, but when they're the only points that we're using to justify increasing diversity, I think that can be problematic. Because then we're looking at diversity as this generalizing gloss, really thinking about Latinx culture as a monolithic, stable culture, when in reality, just because you have a Latinx librarian doesn't mean that that's the equivalent to a Latinx patron. This is oversimplifying Latino culture, because there's a multitude of countries that might identify themselves as Latino, and a multitude of experiences from people in those countries. So I think that we shouldn't be looking at it as just more Latinx librarians will be able to serve more Latinx patrons, and that is why we should have diversity. And I think this quote here kind of is a little bit more decolonized in that it's explaining that we need diversity because of efforts to address past inequities and current unfairness in the underrepresentation of minorities. But I feel like this quote also doesn't go far enough, because, I have a problem with current unfairness. I feel like that's a little bit too light for the racism, the sexism, and all these other isms that are still present in these institutions, in these fields. But it's at least going down a more decolonial track. So when we are recruiting Latinx people because we want them to look like our, we want our patrons to see people that look like them or that share their backgrounds, what are we really valuing here? Because we're valuing the Latinx librarian for their ability to transcend the cultural boundaries and the languages. But where does that leave Latinx librarians who don't meet those exact requirements? Like people who are fifth generation and don't speak any Spanish, or people who do speak Spanish but never went to school in the Spanish dominant areas, so they can't read or write. People who identify as Latinx but don't look like your typical Latinx person. Maybe they're lighter skinned, maybe they're blonde. There's such a wide variety of people who of traits for people who identify as Latinx. And when we're trying to value these librarians for these specific traits that they have, then we're really ignoring the multitude of other experiences that Latinx librarians have and can bring, and the strengths that they can bring to the field. So again, bringing in that hyphen, those in-between identities from people who don't meet these requirements but have other things that they can offer and that maybe we're missing out on when we're not valuing them. And so how to connect this to the idea of dual degree programs for minority recruitments. Specifically, I'm talking about area study dual degree programs. So in my case, I'm Latin American Studies and Library Science. So students in these area study MA programs tend to have experience studying, working, or living in the area. That's usually a requirement of the MA program like these. And if they don't have those specific requisites, they have some sort of connection that's drawing them to this area study. So again, maybe these are people whose heritage is in that country, but they've never been able to visit it themselves because of financial costs or family ties. Usually these students will also have foreign language competency, because again, that's another requirement of these MA programs. And they'll have research interest in these areas. So all these traits are traits that we want in libraries. People from diverse backgrounds, people with language competency or who are working on that. And these traits really manifest in people of color who want to use their backgrounds and their life experiences to change academia. That's why I went into my area studies program, and I think that's a reason why a lot of Latinx people go into Latin American studies, is because they have these connections and they want to go in and change, and like read the literature, see what's being written, and see how their perspectives can change the field. And those are the people that we want in libraries. We want people to be using their stories and their backgrounds to improve the way that libraries function today. So in both cases, we have people of color who have non-traditional knowledge and expertise, and how do we best support them? I think one way that we can do that is providing flexibility. And so looking at the flexibility in terms of students in dual degree programs to change and alter their class requirements. I know in my case, I had a very specific goal in mind, this very specific research interest, and so I worked with my advisors to remove some required courses in exchange for others, do some independent study, work a lot more than the students usually do because I wanted that hands-on experience. And I think having that flexibility is really, really key, because you want to respect where people are coming from and respect that hyphen and not force people into these standard roles, which again is my critique a lot about the diversity gloss and these generalizations we made about if you're a Latinx librarian, then you should speak Spanish because that's why you're valuable to us and that's why we want you here. Like, we need to stop looking, using that language and really trying to fit people into these standard spaces and needs, and instead ask them, what can you bring to us, and how can we support you in what you want to do? And thank you. yourself heard. So then I kind of want to end talking about my own experiences and adding my story to this to sort of fill in that gap in the literature. And so why did I go into Latin American studies? Well, as you know, I'm Peruvian American, and I've always been interested in research in Peru. And I have lived there, I have worked there, I've traveled there, and so I felt like I had a unique perspective to bring because I'm born here in the US, but I grew up there, so I'm very much one foot in each country and always in between. And I actually studied anthropology at UCLA because I wanted to learn Quechua, which is an indigenous language of Peru and the Andean region in general. And so I kind of let my educational trajectory draw me there. And I didn't know at the time that I wanted to go into library science, but through my experiences in undergrad and researching, I realized that I loved academia and I loved doing research, but I wanted to do it in a way that would allow me to learn about others' research as well, which is why academic libraries are a really good place for me to be. But there's not a whole lot of space for indigenous language study in academic libraries. It's a very specialized interest, and so I kind of am trying to bring that more to the forefront and say why they could be valuable for more people than we realize right now. And another thing, one drawback of the dual degree program as a minority, as a potential place for minority recruitment, is the cost. Because you're essentially paying for 2 degrees, and you're going into debt for 2 degrees. And so that can definitely be a drawback for a lot of people, maybe especially people of color. But for me, I wouldn't have done the dual degree program were it not for this scholarship called FLAS, which is the Foreign Language and Area Studies Scholarship. And that's offered by the U.S. Department of Education for people who are interested in studying underrepresented languages, which tend to be the indigenous languages, like Quechua. And so FLAS pays my entire tuition for my MA in Latin American Studies and provides me with a monthly stipend. So that was huge for me. That really gave me the flexibility to be able to do the dual degree. And I think that more people don't know about this program or might be interested in it but haven't heard of it before. And again, that's why it's important to share these stories. Maybe there is somebody there who has an interest in their cultural background and maybe that does include an indigenous language. So this could be something that you are interested in that could lead you down the track to library science. So, yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to once again thank the panelists for all their presentations. And before we turn to the other attendees for questions, I figured I would just kick off the Q&A for a couple of minutes. So a few of you mentioned neutrality, and I'm just wondering if you were putting together something like a toolkit to overhaul or revamp some of the traditional principles of LIS, what would you include? Would you focus on curriculum changes in terms of system neutrality, or would you take another approach?
I can start. So I think one of the most important basic foundations is to get students in degree programs and people in the library profession in general to challenge what they understand libraries to be, to challenge what they think the function of libraries are and how they envision themselves fitting into that space. We had a conversation with our cohort about neutrality and how do you handle questions that may be difficult or sensitive or controversial or just downright ignorant at the reference desk when your role there is to be a person who is sharing information. And I think that conversation for me highlighted that we're seeing like among us ourselves, even though we're all in the same program, we're seeing libraries as having very different functions. For myself, as a Black Latina, as someone who occupies a lot of hyphenated identities, as Sandy explained, it's very difficult to be in a space that claims to be neutral, but also doesn't see someone like me as being a neutral person, that my hair, my skin, the way I act, the way I dress, the way I see the world is automatically political, even if I don't do anything beyond just live my life.
Completely agree with that. Also, I kind of feel like the concept of training for neutrality detracts from what we're bringing to the table. You know, a lot of what we value in our librarians, what we value of people in this profession, have to do with the nuances and uniqueness of their persons, who they are, how they identify, you know, how they feel about the work that they're doing is immensely important. And, training for neutrality often teaches you to kind of remove that from yourself, to kind of make yourself a doll of the institution, so to speak. And it's really important to approach this question, which are really very important obstacles at times, with the fullness of your personality, if we're going to make it kind of useful to the patron, useful to us in that profession.
How do the other two be able to fully engage with the Q&A or Enriquez right now? But I will say, just from my perspective, I think pushing or promoting the idea of professionalism and neutrality would be a better approach. You can't sometimes be a professional and you're supposed to be provided by neutrality. As a human, you're just not a neutral person. It's an impossible place to put in to act as a neutral body when everyone is coming from a different perspective and different area. And those backgrounds are what really make us valuable in terms of information to others.
I will say though, being a board coordinator extent, and you're talking about the customer service has to turn on. And even the idea of professionalism, I think is imbued with a lot of racist, sexist, racialized ways of thinking. Just when you're perceived to be angry, when you're not angry, the way you're expected to speak very highly and high-pitched and these downplaying any sort of thing that might be seen as aggressive.
That's definitely the concept of your perception as aggressive, combative, problematic, is all about an expectation of, well, where are you coming from, why do you have feelings, why are you responding in an emotional way, and well, we're people. We have feelings, we have personalities and opinions, and the reason why we're drawn to a lot of the professional things that we're drawn to are because of those personality traits. It is part of what makes us successful. So when that is challenged as kind of a generalized character trait, you're really detracting from our ability to perform in that role to the top of our ability.
Yes, and I personally have the opposite problem where I generally flat affect, as most of you can see, is sometimes not considered professional or considered like something wrong. Or you said that I just, have no inflection in my voice, and that doesn't really help. But find yourself putting on something of a performance when you're operating in these fields, I feel like. So it would be helpful if a curriculum kind of worked with you in order to review that, to revamp it, to reimagine how you can be yourself and still fulfill this job as you should. A few of you also mentioned recruitment efforts and how to get more people, more diverse bodies into this field. I think the dual degree program does attract more diversity, but there are still several drawbacks aside from cost and aside from having to try to put a program together on your own. I'm also in costume studies with Leia, and the two fields, you can get them to overlap if you work hard enough to do so, but the programs themselves aren't working with you to do that. So you find areas of overlap on your own. If you're operating as a recruiter, do you think what's your pitch, do you think, to a member of an underrepresented group who's maybe considering the field of librarianship, or maybe you've never thought about librarianship, and how would you highlight aspects of the field in order to drive diversity efforts?
Hi, can you hear me? This is Sandy again.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great. So I think that was a pretty good question for me. You know, I really don't like this concept of the pitch because I feel like it's so nerve-wracking, right? You're trying to like squeeze everything that's great about you in just a few minutes. But I think if I were a recruiter, in the position of a recruiter, I would try to learn as much as possible about the person that I'm attempting to recruit first. So maybe, again, asking them about their background and sort of what is interesting to them in terms of research and what their goals are, and to see how those can relate to my institution. Because I think that the most important thing that at least area study librarians want to hear is that their area is valued in the institution, and that they will have flexibility to purchase books that they think are valuable, that they will have the ability to talk to the professors and the students and those workshops and be able to share their expertise. I really think that the goal of an area study librarian is to be able to dialogue with researchers on these topics and offer a perspective that is informed and a part of the conversation. So I would definitely try and find out what their interests are and let them know what resources we could offer. And also in terms of what aspects of library science should be highlighted, I would say that we do strive to have diversity, but that we don't want to create this stereotypical idea of diversity. So I would want to hear about people who speak Spanish, what do you consider your Spanish to be? Because there are many different dialects, there are many different levels of Spanish, that people don't have that academic level. And so I would just want to get as much detail about them as possible.
Okay, and then just for us looking forward, non-whites are expected to become the majority of the nation's children by 2020. With this transformation of minority to majority in mind, and considering our current political climate, can you think about what the future librarians will look like? Do you think we'll still be having these same discussions about diversity and inclusion in 5, 10, or 15 years?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I know I do wish, aside from academic libraries, we also tried to highlight more areas where librarianship is needed and useful, but is not necessarily thought of first. I worked in a newspaper in their editorial library, and I've been in that job at that newspaper for 5 years before I realized what a librarian was there and what their role was. So it would be great to highlight more of those opportunities, especially among a diverse group of people, to really attract more and more people to the area.
Yeah, and I mentioned the Progressive Librarians Guild in my presentation, and I didn't mention other organizations that are also pushing these issues of diversity, challenging the idea of neutrality, like the Libraries for Black Lives organization. I mentioned those because there are people in the profession who are doing this work, who have been doing this work for quite some time. So I hope that together we can push the conversation forward, so we're not still trying to just focus on quotas, like Leia mentioned. We're not just having people in the room so that the room could look a little bit diverse and the room could look a little bit more brown, but then saying, oh no, you're not actually expected to speak up here. You're just expected to nod your head and go along with what we're already doing.
I completely agree with that. Also, to speak to some of the things that I think would be tweaking if we're going to be successful in that effort. Like part of what Sandy mentioned, recruitment needs to be revamped. We need to think about how it happens, more emphasis on the why. Why are we approaching this group, and what do we, understanding what they have potential to get out of this, and and what they want to do as scholars and professionals. I also think the tweaks to the concept of mentorship. Who are mentors going to be? What backgrounds do they have? How are these backgrounds really, really relevant to the scholars that are coming in? What can they offer? Because for the most part, there are a lot of people who can offer different types of experiences and perspectives, but we're not really leveraging all of that. It's very much focused on you're a professional in the field. Great. We're going to partner you with this other person who wants to be a professional in the field. But it's much more dynamic. There are many more layers to what that can be. That kind of support can be incredibly attractive to a person who's potentially on the fence, trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, and not sure if this is the thing that they want to commit to.
With that, I see we're right up at our time, so I just wanted to open it up if anyone had any questions for us or the panelists here.
Okay. We're getting mics from the people who are answering questions so that everyone can hear. If anyone has questions, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll come to you. All right. Just make sure you speak into the mic.
Hi, my name is Sandra. Sorry if I'm... Okay. So I had a question about recruitment. So where do you think LIS recruitment should start? Like, should it start at the undergrad level? Should it go all the way back to middle school? Like, where do you see outreach being the most effective?
Honestly, since I've become a teaching artist, I work in a middle school. And in the ideal world, I would see at middle school, every child has a library card. Everybody knows what their local library is. They know how to find books, or they know where to go to ask questions about resources and information. I don't think it's too early to start talking about where resources can be found and how useful these places can be in the community. As far as recruitment, if those conversations are happening very early, I think it's kind of a problem that solves itself. Because by the time they get to a space where they start thinking about colleges and careers and futures, they've already had an institution like the library within their lives, and hopefully it's been a positive experience.
I would have to agree. I mean, it's never too early to start. It would be great, even if it started in the undergrad program. I attended Syracuse University, and though I was in the library frequently, I don't recall ever actually speaking to a librarian. I went there to use books, to prop myself up studying during 24-hour finals periods, but not to actually engage with the librarians and find out about the work they're doing, any side projects they may have. And so it would be great to start from such an early age to get people interested in going to from public libraries to the school library to the library undergrad would be a great trajectory, I think.
Yeah, I would also second, this is Candy, by the way. I'd also say that I agree with Leia and Whitney that earlier is better, and especially when kids are in middle school. A lot of children of immigrants like me, the public library is a place that I hung out a lot at. It was a free place, a safe place that I could be entertained for many hours. So, and a lot of the case studies and oral histories that I was reading and listening about, like librarians of color, they also identified being in libraries at a young age as a factor in what drew them to the librarianship field. So I think that encouraging kids to use the resources at the library and throughout their lifespan is a really great idea.
Here, can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. So I agree with everything that's been said before me, but I'm also thinking about the ways that as librarians we don't
always advocate on our own behalves. So, instead of thinking of it as recruitment, thinking of ingraining it into the curriculum for elementary, middle, and higher, so it's not like it's kind of seamless, like where it's actually seen as a possible career, lawyer, doctor, librarian, and thinking about librarianship as something that you can kind of do anything with, as evidenced through dual degree programs like this, where you can do technology, you can do costume, you can do history, and you can kind of do whatever you want with the field, but kind of making it an option for students that are going through elementary school to actually see it as something like that they can do when they grow up.
Just to add to that, there are a lot of roles within libraries that are not librarians, and I think those roles aren't always seen or always valued. And I think if we bring attention to those roles as well, as Zakiya was saying, like you can work in technology and in a library, you can work in events and work in a library. You can do so many things and not be a librarian. So just making that clear to people that we're not just sitting there reading books all day. There are many roles for many different types of people.
Any other questions in the room before we go to Twitter for questions? Okay. So, from Twitter, now that you've gone through dual degree programs, what kind of dual degree programs do you wish existed for you and others?
Good question. That's a great question. I have a hard time answering it simply because the program that I found was pretty well suited for my needs. Before I entered the program, I didn't really have an ambition to go to grad school. I didn't think it was something that was going to be for me. I had no idea what my career path was going to be, but when I discovered the Costume Studies Library Science degree program, it was kind of a serendipitous marriage of all of my interests in one place. So, like personally, it's kind of the ideal field of study.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It would be great to see more institutions, I think, embrace dual degree programs or offer something where you can combine fields together and kind of form your own program, a bit like the NYU Skeleton School. It's an individualized study situation, but it would be great to have more opportunities in different universities and colleges where you're able to combine those interests together. I think that's a great way of just going back to recruitment, getting more people interested in that field. If you're not necessarily thinking about library and information science from that one point of view, bringing in the research aspect or the customer service aspect or a variety of other aspects that are involved, you get a much larger number of people interested in it.
Zakiya here. I would personally like to see, any type of interest be able to be married with a library science program. If you have an interest, it should be able to, you should be able to make it happen, so that people can kind of have these same feelings that we experience, where it's like, wow, I can explore the things that I've always been interested in, but also apply those to the field that has done so many things in my life thus far that I've always kind of found interesting, but didn't really know how to get into the field. But also because there are people who may have interest in library or library skills, and they may not end up in the library someday, but just being able to get an appreciation for what we do through getting a library science degree in addition to another degree can prove valuable for both them and us as we work with users who usually don't know exactly what it is that we do. And we can kind of expand our network in that way.
Yeah, this is Sandy here. I agree with that too. I think that I just wish more institutions would offer the dual degree because there was a lot of times that I would look into the Latin American Studies program in some place and realize, well, they don't have a library degree, or they do, but there's no setup to connect them. So it would be great to have that become more of a popular option for people. And like Zakiya saying, just having the flexibility to be able to create an interdisciplinary, program would be great. Maybe even if you could create your own MA program and consult with your mentors and build your own curriculum. And I think that would be a really, really cool step. The personalization aspect to me is the most important part.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much to our panelists.